So this is now what we're going to call the best practices section, which is going to be a summary of chapter 6 of Yin. But this is how to report case studies. So this is kind of the end product in mind of what should be going into it as you finish your lit review is done. Now you're finishing up your data report. So this is how and what to compose of your final product. So you should have this in mind as you go off on your vacation and start collecting data. Most importantly, you cannot begin writing too early. That's a quote directly from Yin. And this is basically saying start writing it now. You have a long paper that's due. The more you write, the better. So there's at least just some ways to start. The strategy that they discuss is inside out and backwards. Inside out means you start with the inside. Start with any products that you can. Start with a table that you want. Put it in an exhibit. If there's a specific quotation you want, list all these out. You can even draft certain portions of your final product. So that could be your data analysis section. You already have a lit review done. You can do some of your designs or methodologies that you'll be using, or even preliminary case descriptions of your specific case, some basic statistics about what's going on, the background, or even the bibliography. I remember I always wait to the last minute, but if you're not doing anything right now, work on the finalized bibliography. After you have all these pieces, you then array them in a sequence, and you start with what you want to describe at the very end and kind of work your way backwards. That's what the strategy is. So we're going to discuss different ways to order it and some overarching themes in the rest of this video. So the lit review and the method section are things that you theoretically already have. So the purpose of the lit review in this final product is to show the mastery over the topic and the method of the study. You want to show the background to what you'll be doing your case study on, as well as the methods that are sometimes used for this case study. And this shows the important questions that you're asking are based in previous research. In your lit review in the final version, if you focus on the key citations, and you don't want to just list 100 things that you've read, what are the key citations and what are the different types of methods and findings that they use that you'll be in dialogue with? The methods portion is more than just saying what you're going to use. You want to be thoughtful, balanced, and transparent. This is going back to the validity points. You want to make it clear that you are being a objective scholar who's trying to understand this issue. So you want to carefully word your research question. You want to clearly define what your cases are and aren't, setting those boundaries. We talked about the data collection profile, how you're going to be collecting data, and then explicit and clear analytic strategy, how you're going to analyze the data so an independent person could do the same thing. Those are lit review and method sections, which you can even start working on now. And now when organizing them, there are 6 different ways that you could organize your paper at the end. The most common, which is used in many, many research articles, is the linear analytic method. And that's where you start with the problem of the issue, you do your lit review, talk about the methods, the data, then you analyze the data, and then you come up with some conclusions. This is that's linear analytic. It's very straightforward. These other ones are more, they're less common, but Yin does discuss them. So just to briefly describe what they are in case you want to use them and discuss with your TAs or professor of how to implement these. Comparative is you repeat the same case study using different descriptions or explanations of the same case. And what is you go through the same facts, and then you say, if these facts is how they fit with this theory, this is how well they fit with this theory, how well they fit with this theory, and then it's ultimately the way that you describe through pattern matching, which we discussed earlier in an earlier video, of which theoretical description makes the most sense. And chronological is pretty straightforward. That means you just actually follow the case along the lines of what's happening early, middle, and then back. If you were to use a chronological thing, it's very important, or it's suggested that you start with the end of what you find most important, and then you work your way back so you know in the beginning what's important to include to get that final conclusion. Theory building, you just put these in order if you're building a new theory. That's unlikely at this stage in your career, but if you really think you're onto something new, help us follow your theory building process would be the main ordering. Suspense would be the main outcome, is your initial section, and then the remainder, which would be the building up to that suspense, are then developed and devoted, and you go through alternative explanations. You're like, oh wow, this is the one that really worked out. Unsequenced is If the different parts of your case study don't matter, the ordering, that's highly unlikely. So that's going to be, for example, if you're doing an organization, you have one chapter on the workers, one chapter on the management, one chapter on the product lines, one chapter on their finances. That's really not, unless you're working on an organization, it's just, yeah, the order doesn't matter for those. And then finally, Yin discusses what an exemplary case study is and gives 5 characteristics of it. This is how to make a lasting contribution to the research community. And this deals with these 5 issues. And basically, one thing it's also highly suggested, think of a case study that you've read that you think does things really well and kind of mimic that model. Um, and most likely that model will be significant, which is defined as a topic that's of general interest or that the underlying issues are nationally important, whether in their theory, whether in their practicality, or in policy terms. And this goes back to the case selection strategy. If you look in previous videos of, are you looking at a revelatory case, you're looking at a critical case, all of these things are significant in the case study. Completeness means that there's clear attention to the boundaries of the phenomenon in the context. So whether you're saying there's a geographical, a time boundary, only looking at these activities, it's basically not just having boundaries due to I didn't have enough time, but making a logical and analytic reason for why this is the reasonable bounds for what your case study is about. And then it's also very important to consider alternative explanations. So you have your own theory, but what you really want to do is give rival explanations a fair chance in your study. So you don't want to appear biased. For example, you don't want to make your paper sound like you're talking on behalf of workers against management or management against workers. Or if you're looking at a youth program, you don't want it to sound like it's from the adult's perspective. You want to try to be as balanced as possible. As well as you want to make sure that you have alternatives that most seriously challenge the assumptions of the case. So if you think that pretend you're having a discussion with someone, and someone, after reading your paper, like, you know what about blank as a possible explanation? You in your paper already want to have those in there and you want to reject them. You want to give them a fair chance. So try to interpret the facts as the way that someone else would and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense given the totality. Sufficient evidence is basically saying that you are including your most relevant evidence. This goes in your case study design. You're going to be sure that you know how it was, or how the reader knows how it was, your evidence was collected, how it was handled, and how you interpreted it. And again, this goes back to it's neutral and it's a complete amount of evidence. And you want the reader to come up with the same independent conclusion that you did, and also be able to judge the validity of your personal interpretation. And finally, you want it to be engaging. So if you, in your mind, at least are writing and says, wow, this is earth-shattering. Look at how great this, look at my findings. You want the reader to kind of be that excited with you. So in total, from this was, again, a summary of Yin Chapter 6. Discusses we should be writing anytime you can. If you write 1 page a day, at least you're making progress. We talked about how to do a lit review and methodology section that are pretty straightforward to write that you have already done, and you can write those at any time. We discussed ways to organize the totality of your essay, your term paper, excuse me. And then finally, what would be an exemplary case study characteristic? So what you really want to focus on, your end product looking like.